Listen now to the book, One Night with the Hybrid King, written by the author Anya Curves. If you want to buy the ebook, link in the description. Like and share.
Chapter 11, Seraphina. There is nothing to hear but the echo of my own footsteps resounding through the desolate halls of the castle's abandoned wing. Each sound reverberates against the stone walls, creating a ghostly, solitary symphony that only emphasizes the isolation of the place. The feeling of being watched follows me like a restless shadow, forcing me to look back repeatedly, assuring myself I'm not being followed. Every stone seems to be steeped in memory, holding fragments of the countless spells cast, every transgression I committed in the name of forbidden magic, all the promises made in the heat of darkness. As I near the dungeon, the weight of my responsibilities and choices grows tangible, almost overwhelming. The magical lock I placed at the dungeon entrance remains untouched, its chains glowing softly with the magic emanating from within. To anyone who isn't an enchantress, this dungeon is merely an abandoned place, forgotten by time and need. But for me, it's a sanctuary, a place where I can truly be myself, where the facade I built as Caelum's wife falls away, revealing my true self, a being shaped by power and necessity. After I married Caelum, I realized I needed a fixed point, a place to exercise and nurture my mystical side. Light spells like camouflage and small charms that draw little from my vital energy, I can perform anywhere without much preparation. But for something as complex and dangerous as the shifters, forbidden magic that defies natural laws, I need a sanctuary. The dungeon, with its thick walls and hidden secrets, is perfect for this purpose. Around it, I've placed intricate magical alarms, webs of protection that prevent any intruder from approaching without my knowledge. To humans, the place seems haunted, a source of inexplicable anguish that keeps them away, as if the very air around it were laden with death and despair. I enter the dungeon and inhale deeply, comforted by the familiar, reassuring sensation of magic flowing through the environment like a gentle river, enveloping me in its current. It's like returning home to a place where I am understood, where I don't have to pretend. Lights ignite automatically as I pass, casting a warm, soft glow that illuminates the dark corners of the dungeon. Some of the enchanted items I store here stir slightly at my presence, as if greeting me, celebrating my return. Small sparks of magic dance in the air, swirling around me, creating an atmosphere of expectation and latent power. I walk to my private library, where rows of ancient, forbidden books rest on weathered wooden shelves. Each of these books is a source of power. But there is one book in particular I seek, one that carries within it the weight of generations of enchantresses, the most potent and forbidden of all, the Bloodbound Codex. Few have had the opportunity to touch this ancient tome, and even fewer have survived its reading. My mother gave me this book on my wedding day, a grim offering symbolizing our lineage's hope that I would be able to save our kingdom through union with Caelum. But hope, like magic, has a price, and I am increasingly aware of that price. The book itself is a work of macabre art. The cover, made of dark leather that almost appears black, pulses with a life of its own, as if it were breathing. The leather is stained with deep shades of red, almost as though it has been soaked in blood over the centuries, giving it a sinister and throbbing appearance. Along the edges of the cover, aged silver chains are interwoven in complex patterns, depicting ancient runes and seals of protection, symbols only an enchantress could decipher. The title of the book is carved into the leather in rustic letters, subtly glinting with ruby, as though the words had been written in dried blood. At the center of the cover lies a raised symbol, a drop of blood, intricately detailed, as if about to trickle down the cover, appearing almost alive. The clasp of the book is a masterpiece of brutality and symbolism. Made of heavy metal, it is adorned with tiny skulls and bones, reminders of the lethal power contained within the tome. The clasp seems to demand a blood pact to be opened, with a small blade embedded, ready to make the necessary cut. When I finally open the Bloodbound Codex, I feel the temperature around me drop abruptly, as though the very air had been sucked into the book. The atmosphere becomes denser, heavier, as if the essence of the book were absorbing the vitality around it, feeding off life itself to grant the power it promises. As I perform the shifter spell, I catch my reflection in the mirror. I wear the face of my mate Caelum's cousin, Duke Alexander. After delving into Aria's entire life, knowing that she once dated Alexander feels like a twist of fate with a particularly cruel sense of humor. It wasn't easy to acquire a vial of Alexander's blood, especially with him off on a spy mission for Caelum, just to carry out forbidden magic with a shifter. But here I am, using his face, even if just for a few hours, only to prevent Aria from meeting Caelum again. I know he plans to inspect the place where Aria works, and I want to get there before he does. When I arrive at Aria's workplace, Caelum's team of soldiers is already positioned, scouring the entire building. With a bit of perception magic, I manage to slip past the soldiers without any trouble of being recognized. I ask where King Caelum might be, and when they inform me he's in a room interrogating an employee, I pray it's not Aria. I linger around the perimeter, pretending to search for evidence related to the wolf-spawn renegades, until I notice the door open and Aria storm out. Caelum wears a satisfied, provocative smile, a look I know all too well, and it displeases me greatly. My plan to intercept Aria with Alexander's face, so she wouldn't be here when Caelum arrived, has completely backfired. Aria stops in the middle of the hall when she sees me, and I quickly turn my head, pretending I haven't noticed her. Damn it! I mutter in frustration, heading toward the kitchen and making a swift exit. I pass the other soldiers almost at a run, trying to find the exit through the back door. When I finally make it outside, I hide behind the garbage cans, overflowing and reeking. The stench is unbearable, but I crouch down to conceal myself while casting a camouflage spell around me. From a gap beside the bin, I watch as Aria appears in the alleyway of the building. She looks in both directions, searching for Alexander. Her face bears an expression of expectation mixed with disappointment when she doesn't see him. I watch as she crouches down, leaning against the wall, and realize that whatever her feelings towards Caelum may be, they can't compare to the effect Alexander has on her life. With this scene before me, I cannot let it cloud my judgment. Aria and her children must disappear from Caelum's life forever, and I need to find a way to make that happen, as quickly as possible.
Chapter 12, Aria. What's going on? Aren't you working tonight? Are you sick by any chance? Lyra, my mother, asks, surprise evident in her voice. I stay seated on the living room rug, playing with Aloan and Thorn. The two of them are building a castle out of plastic blocks, pretending it's their fortress. Because of the recent attack on the palace, the king's been investigating several staff members, so my boss has closed the hall for the next few days. I answer looking down, trying to shake off the anxiety and fear of losing my job. The memory of my last conversation with Caelum still echoes in my mind. His insinuation that I was having an affair with that disgusting excuse of a boss makes my blood boil. Did he think I was a prostitute? That I'd sleep with just anyone? Even if, in some insane way, I did sleep with Caelum 5 years ago, that doesn't mean I do this often. Are you on vacation, Mommy? Thorn asks in a sweet, animated voice. His light brown eyes sparkle at the thought of having me home for longer. Just for a few days, my angel, I reply tenderly. I don't want to let on to my children what it truly means to be home during the week. How will we be financially, Aria? Lyra asks impatiently. I take a deep breath and shrug. Times like these, a good husband would be our salvation. How is it that you haven't found a good man like Alexander yet? You're always surrounded by decent men at those events you work. I sigh and shoot a serious look at my mother, but she ignores any reaction she doesn't like, returning to sipping her coffee. That's my workplace, not a place to find someone, Mother. Besides, I'll probably be paid for the work I did at the palace, I say with little hope, and my mother lets out a disdainful laugh. They think you're involved in the attack, Aria. The crown won't pay you a penny, trust me, my mother retorts with bitterness and sarcasm. I notice Aloan and Thorn listening in on my conversation with Lyra, their sweet, soft faces starting to show signs of fear and worry. It doesn't matter. I can be paid with the most beautiful smiles in the world from my 2 little angels. I reply with the most cheerful and upbeat voice I can muster. I lunge forward to tickle my children, causing them to collapse onto the rug in fits of giggles and squeals. I see my mother roll her eyes and return to the kitchen. The sound of my children's laughter brings a sense of peace to my heart. Everything I do is for their sake, it will always be for their sake. Once again, I catch myself noting the resemblances between Thorn, Aloan, and the king. Aloan's green eyes, Thorn's blonde, straight hair. My daughter has Caelum's complexion, which makes her cheeks blush easily, while Thorn inherited my darker tone, a warm brown that always looks sun-kissed. My children have mixed features, traits that could very well be Caelum's or Alexander's. My daughter's wavy brown hair could just as easily be mine or Alexander's. Doubt begins to consume me, and I try to control my fears. After all, What would be the better option? Children of my ex-boyfriend or of the king? A married man who's the most powerful person in the kingdom, and, because of it, the one in the most danger? Sensing my worries, Eloan gets up from the rug and comes over to me. She hugs me lovingly and rests her head on my shoulder. Don't be sad, Mommy. We only need you. Everything will be okay, Eloan suddenly declares, surprising and also comforting me. I hug her back, gently stroking her back. Nearly a week at home without any word from work, and my anxiety is beginning to escalate. I start to think about looking for another job when I receive a message from my boss on my phone that reads, "Lovely Aria, come to my office 20 minutes before your shift. We need to talk." The message makes me uncomfortable because of the greeting. My boss is a repulsive man who's always hitting on me. The King Caelum's arrival last week was a godsend for me. I fear that this time, I won't have a way out. I can't afford to be fired. With everything that's been happening, with all the attacks, jobs are becoming harder to find. I'm going back to work today, I mentioned to my mother. She's sitting on the couch reading a gossip magazine. Lyra looks up at me with disdain and gives a short smile. Finally, you'll stop lazing around. We need money to buy things. Your children's milk is almost out, Lyra declares, a biting tone in her voice. Mom, I'm doing my best, okay? You know that, I reply, weariness laced in my voice. Lyra merely shrugs and turns her attention back to the magazine. For my mother, nothing I do is good enough. I believe the only time I made her happy was when I started dating Alexander. For her, a successful woman is one who's well married, with a rich man who can support her. It's ironic, given that my father, as she's told me, didn't have 2 coins to rub together, dying when I was a child without leaving her a single penny. I try to understand her obsession with financial stability, but the way she looks down on my work leaves a sadness in my heart. As I arrive in front of the building where I work, an unsettling feeling begins to overtake me. Something feels wrong, an indescribable sensation that settles like a heavy cloud over my mind. I pause for a moment on the sidewalk, looking at the building with a growing sense of unease. I check my watch once more, verifying the time. I'm not late, and yet the silence emanating from the building is disturbing. The lights are off, the windows dark and opaque, like blind eyes refusing to reveal what's happening inside. My colleagues should already be here. The usual sound of conversations and movement should fill the space, but the silence is almost deafening. As I walk toward the entrance, a shiver runs down my spine, setting my nerves on edge. With each step through the empty hall, the sense that something is deeply wrong intensifies. Shadows stretch along the walls, seeming to move with me, as if they're watching, lurking. The silence is so thick it feels oppressive, and the absence of any human sound makes my heart beat faster, the pulse blending with the soft echo of my footsteps on the floor. The darkness seems to swallow the space, and I'm forced to turn on the switches as I go, each click breaking the silence with a sharp snap. The lights flicker on with a cold, sterile brightness, casting sharp shadows that dance on the walls, yet they do nothing to dispel the feeling that I'm being watched, as if something or someone is hiding in the darker corners waiting. Hello. Is anyone there? My voice echoes through the empty space, reverberating off the walls like a desperate whisper, but there's no response. When I finally reach the hallway that leads to my boss's office, I notice a faint light slipping through the partially open door. My hands grow clammy, and my mouth turns dry as I approach. Hello? Anyone? I repeat, more to myself than anyone else, my voice now barely a whisper. No response. The echo of my footsteps seems to mock me, spreading through the empty hallways, as if I were completely alone. Finally, I'm in front of the office door. The light inside is steady, cold, casting an unnatural glow across the floor. I place my hand on the doorknob. The cold metal against my skin makes me hesitate for a moment. Something is deeply wrong here. With trembling fingers, I turn the knob and push the door open, revealing what lies inside. It takes a few seconds for my mind to comprehend what I'm seeing. My boss's body is slumped in the leather chair, but what captures my gaze is his throat. Slashed. In a grotesque, cruel way. The wound is deep, brutal, and blood pours out in profusion, staining his clothes and spreading across the floor in a chaotic, macabre pattern. The red color is so vivid, so real, that it seems like a stain on reality itself, something that shouldn't exist, but there it is, right before my eyes. Shock overwhelms me, freezing me in place. My mind screams, wants to react, wants to shout, but my body refuses to obey. I feel something warm and sticky on my hand, which is still gripping the doorknob. I look down and see blood. His blood. It's on my hand, covering my skin, warm, as if touching it made everything even more real. My heart races, pounding so hard that it seems to echo in my ears, drowning out any other sound. I am paralyzed, unable to look away from the horror before me. Panic begins to swell in my chest, rising like a furious tide, but before I can react, before the scream of horror lodged in my throat can escape, I hear footsteps behind me. For a moment, a brief, desperate moment, I feel a wave of relief. I'm not alone. The presence of another person seems to break the spell that was holding me frozen. But that relief is cruelly brief. As I turn to inform them of what I found, I'm startled by a woman rushing into the corridor. Her eyes are wide, filled with a mixture of horror and accusation, and she points at me with a trembling finger. There! She's there! Officers, the woman shouts in a piercing voice that hurts my ears. Arrest her. The order is clear, relentless, and it strikes my chest like a death blow. What? My voice comes out as a whisper, weak, trembling, laden with disbelief. My world crumbles around me as I try to process what is happening, but there's no time. Panic, fear, and confusion mix in a chaotic storm within me as the horror of the situation unfolds before my eyes, and I realize, with painful clarity, that I am being accused of something unthinkable. Chapter 13, Aria. The woman advances toward me like an impending storm, her eyes shining with a mixture of hatred and despair. Behind her, 5 armed police officers follow in her wake, their faces grim, prepared for what seems to be a confirmation of their belief that I am guilty. Panic swells within me like a wave about to crash. My heart pounds so hard against my ribs that it feels like it will tear through my chest. I raise my hands in a gesture of surrender, trying to show my innocence, but the gesture seems small and insignificant against the gravity of the situation. It's at that moment that the smell of blood finally hits my nostrils, thick and metallic, filling the air around me. Nausea rises in my throat, mixed with the growing desperation. My hands tremble, which only seems to confirm, in the minds of others, my supposed guilt. My eyes widen in horror and confusion, and a silent scream of protest echoes inside me. But my words are suffocated by the charged atmosphere of accusation. Before I can form any coherent defense, the woman shoves me forcefully, and I nearly stumble, my weak legs struggling to keep me standing. The officers, quick and efficient, restrain the woman before she can attack me again, but her hysterical screams continue, slicing through the air like sharp knives. She screams at me, her words filled with venom and pain, and each accusation that leaves her mouth feels like a blow straight to my stomach. I didn't do anything. I shout, my voice trembling, trying to break through the barrier of fear and distrust that has formed around me. He was already like that when I got here. The truth is in my words, but they feel weak, powerless, lost in the cacophony of screams and the relentless sound of my heart pounding in my ears. The officers, however, remain indifferent to my words. Their faces are masks of relentless professionalism, their eyes hard, as if they've already decided my fate. The woman continues to cry hysterically, her sobs tearing through the air like wails, and even though I did not commit the crime, I feel a pang of compassion for her. The pain in her voice is palpable, a pain that seems to cross the distance between us and lodge itself in my chest. "You killed my mate, you witch," she screams, her voice filled with desperation and hatred. Her words are like poison, corroding the little emotional stability I have left. Dread consumes me as the officers move toward me. One of them, a tall man with dark skin and a determined, cold expression, grabs my wrist firmly. Before I can process what's happening, he spins me around swiftly, and I feel the cold metal of handcuffs tightening around my wrists, binding my hands behind my back. Humiliation and helplessness hit me hard, and for a moment, all I can do is stare at my boss's lifeless body, still slumped in the chair, his image now etched in my mind like a permanent mark. Bile rises in my throat, and I close my eyes tightly, trying to block out the grotesque image that continues to replay in my mind. But no matter how hard I try, the horror of what I saw and what I'm being accused of refuses to disappear. I swear to God I didn't kill him. I'm innocent. My voice rises, laden with desperation but also raw sincerity. Each word is a plea, a desperate attempt to make someone listen, someone believe me. But the words seem to fall into a void, finding no echo, as the officer leads me down the hallway. As I exit the building, reality crashes against me with full force. The blue and red lights of the police cars flash incessantly, illuminating the night with pulses that seem to beat in sync with my heart. The glow of the lights cuts through the darkness, reflecting off the windows, and creating a sharp contrast with the cold, sterile light inside the building. The scene is surreal, almost as if I am trapped in a nightmare from which I cannot wake. Outside, the people gathered on the sidewalks seem to form a sea of indistinct faces, a mass of judging eyes that pierce my soul. Each one carries a different expression, some filled with pure morbid curiosity, while others display a silent, implacable judgment. My eyes, now blurred by the tears I stubbornly hold back, can barely focus on these unknown faces. "You need to believe me, gentlemen," I plead, my voice reduced to an almost inaudible whisper, as if the little strength I have left is slipping away along with the tears that finally roll down my face. My words, laden with the weight of fear, injustice, and the terror of being incarcerated for something I didn't do, seem to dissipate into the air, like dry leaves in the wind, leaving no impact at all. And then, the car doors shut with a final click, cutting off any last trace of hope I might have nurtured. Each insult, each accusation she hurls my way, seems to shred the little dignity I have left, leaving my spirit in tatters. The tears now flow freely down my face, tracing lines of despair across my skin. I try to convince myself, even if only mentally, that I'm innocent, that nothing she says holds weight. Yet the bitter truth is that, looking around, I don't see a single person who believes me. Everyone present seems to have already judged and condemned me in their minds, becoming silent accomplices in the injustice I am about to suffer. The police officers get into the car, and soon we head down the road to the police station. The silence inside the car is oppressive, a heavy blanket that spreads over me, stifling any attempt to find comfort or hope. I feel small, fragile, lost in the back seat, with the cuffs squeezing my wrists, a constant reminder of my helplessness. The blood that stained my hand earlier has now dried, leaving a rough, unpleasant sensation on my skin, a constant reminder of the horror I witnessed. What will happen to me? My voice comes out weak, almost like a whisper, laden with a fear so deep I can hardly believe it's coming from me. "Silence, human!" The response comes quick and sharp, the officer's deep voice reverberating through the car, making my entire body tremble in fear. His answer leaves no room for questions or hope, reducing me to a mere prisoner, voiceless, without rights. The only sound breaking the oppressive silence is the crackling of static from the police radio, a hollow noise that seems to echo the chaos within me. The journey to the station only heightens my despair. I can't be imprisoned for a crime I didn't commit. My boss was a creep and a scoundrel, but that doesn't mean he deserved to die. At least, not in such a brutal way. When we finally arrive at the station, I feel the cold night air penetrate my body, as if trying to steal the little warmth I still have left. The building is illuminated by a cold, impersonal light, which only accentuates how disconnected and isolated I feel from the world around me. As I'm escorted out of the car, I realize that my every move is being observed with suspicion and curiosity. What will become of me now? The question throbs in my mind, but the answers seem as distant as the moon. I want to make a call. I need to call someone. I say, my voice filled with fear and insecurity. The officer throws a hard, cold look in my direction, a look that makes me feel even smaller, even more defenseless. He grips my arm firmly, leading me inside the building. The police station is a stark contrast to the oppressive silence of the car. The place is filled with voices, movement, and chaotic energy. The noise of conversations, phones ringing, orders being given, all of it forms a cacophony that only intensifies my state of confusion and despair. I feel crushed by this brutal reality, as if I am sinking into a sea of unknown in different faces. The officer guides me down a long corridor, its walls lined with doors that lead to unknown rooms. At the end of this corridor, I see a row of phones, old and worn from use. He gently nudges me toward one of them. "You have 5 minutes," he informs me sternly, leaving me in front of a phone.
Chapter 14, Lyra. The bright neon lights flicker with an almost hypnotic intensity, casting shades of blue, red, and green across the casino's atmosphere, creating a dazzling spectacle that seems to transform the night into a kaleidoscope of vibrant colors. The constant sound of coins dropping into slot machines, interspersed with the gentle shuffle of cards and the carefree laughter of players, fills the air with an electric energy. It's an environment exuding a dangerous mix of excitement and addiction, where every noise seems to promise the possibility of a sweeping victory or a devastating loss. The animated voices around me echo like an entrancing song, blending with the sound of dice rolling and chips sliding across tables, all of which fuels my determination. I'm here to keep playing, to exhaust every last cent of the stack of money Aria gave me to buy groceries at the market. But unlike a regular night of mundane chores, I see this situation as an opportunity to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. Here, in the casino's pulsing heart, I believe I can multiply that sum, and a nearly visceral intuition tells me my luck will change tonight. The temptation is overwhelming, and I feel that just a few more rounds are all I need to alter my fate. After all, I deserve a bit of fun, an escape from the exhausting and dull routine that my life has become. My daughter is very ungrateful. You understand, I let slip, with a sigh carrying a mixture of resentment and melancholy, as I turn to the jovial young man seated beside me. He must be in his early 30s, with a vibrant energy that reminds me of the time I too was young, with dreams and ambitions. There's something about his face, a hint of familiarity, that evokes memories of Aria's late father, as if life were mocking me by placing this familiar figure by my side now, in this setting of temptations and bets. The young man offers a faint smile, a nearly imperceptible gesture, and nods in agreement, but it's clear his attention is elsewhere, perhaps on the spinning roulette in front of us, or on the possibility of a big win. I feel a bitter pang as I realize I no longer possess the beauty that once captured eyes and hearts, the beauty that made me feel invincible. Those days of youth, of freedom without the shackles of being a mother and, later, a grandmother, seemed to belong to another life, another person. Now, at 50, life has dragged me into a role I never wanted, an existence where the word grandmother has become an invisible chain binding me to responsibilities I never asked for, taking care of Aloan and Thorn, those little pests who are as innocent as they are irritating. I have to take care of her kids while she works, I continue, bitterness seeping into every word I utter, seeking some form of solidarity in the stranger beside me, taking them to school, feeding them, bathing them, dressing them. It's such a drag. I wasn't born for this. You understand. But even as I speak, it's clear the young man is no longer listening. His eyes are fixed on the roulette wheel, the large disc spinning at a speed that seems to defy time, each turn creating a sense of anticipation that reverberates across the table. The white ball is launched with a precise motion, dancing among the numbers. I feel my heart race as I watch, my breath catching in anticipation. I've split my bets across 4 numbers, trying to increase my chances of winning something substantial, something that could offer me more than just grocery money. The roulette starts to slow down, and the tension around the table rises palpably. Each player is trapped in the same trance, eyes fixed on the ball bouncing and moving with no apparent aim. The environment seems to freeze for a moment, as if time itself has paused just to heighten the drama of the moment. And then, with one last decisive movement, the ball lands on one of the numbers I had chosen. With a triumphant shout, I leap to my feet, already reaching out to grab my chips, pulling in not only what I won but also, almost unconsciously, the chips of other players. My body buzzes with excitement, and for a brief moment, I feel like I am in control again, able to manipulate fate to my favor. The young man next to me gives a short smile, a gesture that seems to carry both surprise and mild admiration. There's something about him, perhaps the sparkle in his eyes or the softness in the curve of his lips, that is surprisingly charming, and I can't help but wonder if, in another life, if he were just a bit older, maybe 45, I might have a chance with him. But these are just fantasies, fleeting thoughts that pass like shadows while the real world continues to spin around us. "And where are the kids now?" he asked suddenly, his voice breaking the bubble of euphoria in which I was wrapped. The question catches me off guard, not only because I didn't expect him to actually be listening to what I was saying, but because it brings back the reality I was trying to forget. "Oh, I left them with the neighbor," I reply, my voice still carrying the joy of my recent win. "She has a daughter the same age. I told her I had to take care of some business for my daughter. I deserve a little fun, right?" Before the young man can respond, my cell phone rings loudly from within my bag. I roll my eyes at the unwelcome interruption, rummaging through the clutter in my purse, hoping it's not my neighbor calling to have me pick up the kids so soon. When I finally find the phone, I notice it's from an unknown number, which strikes me as odd. I never receive calls from unfamiliar numbers. Must be a mistake, I mutter to myself before answering. Hello, Mom. It's me, Aria. My daughter's voice comes through, heavily distorted with a lot of background noise. I feel my heart turn to ice. She can't know I'm at the casino. Hi, Aria. What happened? I ask quickly, trying to muffle the casino noise behind me. I've got the TV on. Just tell me what you need. Mom, I need you to come to the station downtown, please. I was arrested, and I need you here. Aria's voice is filled with despair. What? You were arrested? Aria, what did you do? I ask, shocked and full of worry. Nothing. I didn't do anything, Mom. They arrested me without just cause. Please, I need you to come to the station to discuss bail. Aria explains hastily. A male voice in the background tells her time is nearly up. I have to go, Lyra, but I'm at the station downtown. Please come quickly. Aria pleads one last time before the call disconnects. Damn it! Damn it all! That girl never learns. I curse impatiently. Is everything all right? The handsome young man asks, his tone more curious than concerned. But I welcome the attention all the same. My daughter, she only knows how to make bad choices. She got herself arrested, and she wouldn't even tell me why. Bet it's over something stupid. She's always doing something to ruin my life, I complain, bitterness thick in my voice. Arriving at the police station with 2 sleepy 5-year-olds in the early hours of the morning is a nightmare. A wave of despair and exhaustion washes over me, as if the weight of the world rests on my shoulders while I try to guide Aloan and Thorn through this chaotic scene. The place, even at this late hour, is far from peaceful. On the contrary, it's teeming with people, loud voices echoing across the spacious hall, creating a cacophony that only amplifies the discomfort. The fluorescent lights, cold and unyielding, illuminate the space mercilessly, exposing every corner and every weary, anxious expression on the faces around us. Aloan and Thorn cling to my hands with a grip that betrays how frightened they are. I can feel a subtle tremor in their small bodies, as though fear itself is vibrating through them. Their wide, bewildered eyes reflect a confusion and terror that they shouldn't have to face at such a young age. Is Mommy here? Thorn asks in a shaky voice, his brown eyes fixed on me, seeking a sense of security that I'm struggling to maintain. His innocent tone strikes me like a blow, revealing just how lost he feels amid all this chaos. Yes, your mother is here. We're going to find out why right now. I reply impatiently, pulling them both towards the information desk. At the counter, I'm greeted by a policewoman with straight hair who regards me with a coldness that makes me feel invisible. She doesn't even blink as she begins typing something into the computer, her hands moving with the mechanical efficiency of someone who's done this task thousands of times before. The tension inside me coils tighter, like a knot in my stomach, as I wait for any news about my daughter. It's as if the air around me is growing denser, heavier, making it hard even to breathe. Hello, good evening. I'd like to inquire about the detainee named Aria Everhart. I'm her mother, I say, trying to keep my voice steady, though the anxiety betrays me, spilling into words that come out faster than I'd intended. The officer doesn't look up from the computer screen. She's in the interrogation room, the officer finally replies, but her voice is almost lifeless, devoid of warmth or empathy, as if she were announcing the weather rather than someone's fate. The response, though expected, hits me like a bucket of cold water. All right, and when will I be able to see her? Concern seeps into my words, and this time I don't bother hiding the fear I feel. Only after she's been interrogated, ma'am. The officer responds, still without emotion, as though my worries are nothing more than an inconvenience. Despair clings to me, a suffocating feeling that makes each breath a struggle. I glance down at Aloan and Thorn, who now look more fragile than ever, their faces pale, and their eyes filled with questions I can't answer. How long will it take? I have 2 children here, officer. I need to speak with my daughter. I press on, my voice rising an octave in a desperate attempt to be heard, to be understood. But instead of sympathy, I encounter only an impenetrable barrier. The officer lifts her gaze to meet mine, and the look she gives me is hard, almost impersonal, as if I'm merely another name on a long list of problems she needs to address before the end of her shift. She seems completely unmoved by the presence of the children or by the urgency in my voice. "You may wait over there in the hallway," she says, vaguely pointing toward an area filled with hard plastic chairs. There's no estimated time for her release. "Good night," the way she ends a sentence, with a good night that feels like a full stop to our interaction, leaves me stunned. A rising anger, a frustration that pulses in my head, builds as I watch the officer return to her work, already dismissing me as if I'm nothing more than a temporary distraction. Eloan and Thorn still clutch my hands, now tighter, and I realize I can't let them see my fragility, my fear. I take a deep breath, forcing a calm expression, and guide the children to the cold, uncomfortable chairs, where we sit, waiting for an answer that may never come.
Chapter 15, Caelum. Aria's mother is a bitter, distracted woman, the kind of person who carries the weight of wrong choices on her shoulders, though she rarely realizes it. She is the living example of a life that could have been, but never was, an existence that drags on amidst regrets and unfulfilled expectations. Seeing that woman sitting at the roulette table, pouring her laments about her daughter as if I were a long-time confidant, filled me with a mix of disbelief and disdain. She spoke with a familiarity that bordered on the absurd, completely ignoring the fact that I was nothing more than a stranger to her. Using camouflage magic in my own casino is something I've done for a long time. It's a skill that has become almost instinctive, a necessity that has imposed itself as the years have passed and the attacks from the wolf-spawn renegades have become more frequent. Being half enchantress, the ability to blend in offers me a rare freedom, allowing me to escape the suffocating protection of the castle guards and experience, even if just for a few hours, life as an ordinary man. Here, amidst the neon lights and the metallic sound of coins falling, I am just another player trying to distract myself from my own demons. After handling all the finances and resupplying the establishment, I decide to play a few rounds at the casino, letting the roulette decide my fate for a few minutes. It was a futile effort, I knew, but anything that could take me away from the endless conflicts between Seraphina and me was worth trying. With each new failed pregnancy attempt, I feel like a new brick is added to the wall rising between us. What once was an easy, promise-filled relationship has now turned into a silent battle, where the weapons are unsaid words and avoided glances. I don't know if the blame is mine or hers, if something is lacking between us, or if fate has simply decided that we should not have a child. But it shouldn't be this difficult. Not for me, not for someone with my power and influence. As I spun the roulette distractedly, my thoughts wandered through this labyrinth of frustrations. I was so absorbed in my own dilemmas that I didn't even notice when the woman beside me started speaking. Her hair beginning to gray at the roots, and her face marked by time didn't match the atmosphere of the casino, but she seemed determined to vent. At first, her words were just a distant buzz, something my mind registered without truly processing. But when she mentioned her daughter's name, Aria, while answering the phone, my interest was awakened abruptly, as if I had been yanked back to reality by an electric shock. Aria. The name sounded like a key turning in a lock long since sealed. There was so much disorganized information thrown at me by that woman that, for a moment, I was incredulous. She mentioned the grandchildren, the difficulties of caring for them, the ingratitude of her daughter. All this while I watched, silently, trying to piece together the fragments she was dropping. It couldn't be the same Aria I had encountered weeks ago. Not the fascinating and dangerous woman who had stirred something in me that I thought was long dormant. She had children? This was a revelation that hit me like a low blow, causing my stomach to churn with a pang of envy. A woman so promiscuous, so captivating, so wrong could have children. And I, a powerful king, with a beautiful mate, was stuck in this spiral of attempts and failures. Fate seemed to enjoy the irony, laughing at me from the shadows as I struggled against an ever-growing sense of inadequacy. I couldn't help but wonder, how long would fate continue to be cruel and ironic with me? How much longer would I endure this silent torture before giving in to despair? When the woman hurried out of the casino, a part of me wanted to follow her, to know more, to understand what was happening. But I forced myself to stay where I was, battling the curiosity that throbbed in my mind like a persistent headache. Aria, imprisoned? The idea seemed as absurd as it was intriguing. My mind began to work frantically, trying to connect the dots, but the more I thought, the cloudier everything became. I returned to the castle, and throughout the journey, I tried to push aside my curiosity about Aria, about why she had been imprisoned. It could have been blackmail. She surely must have blackmailed the chief, and he didn't accept it. Or maybe something with the wolf-spawn renegades. I still believe she might be involved with them in some way. Back in my room, I found Seraphina sitting on the bed with some random book on her lap. She looked so serene, so unaware of the whirlwind of emotions I was feeling. Her golden eyes, usually so warm, now seemed distant, reflecting a concern she wasn't voicing. Even in her silence, there was a palpable sadness, a distance that only heightened the loneliness consuming me. I tried to ignore the fact that, while she was there, quiet and devoted, my thoughts were with another woman. "My dear, what happened?" "You're extremely agitated," Seraphina suddenly remarked, lowering the book and fixing her gaze on me. Her eyes shone with a soft light, but I could see the concern hidden there, a concern that only intensified my guilt. I sat beside her on the bed and shook my head, trying to push the thoughts of Aria away. I have a caring, attentive mate. Even with our current issues, I know Seraphina is a great queen, a loyal wife. I can't allow my thoughts to be consumed by another woman I slept with only once, 5 years ago. "Nothing, my queen. Just the fatigue of the day," I lie, knowing she will likely sense the falseness in my words. I lean in to kiss her, but the gesture, which should have been an expression of affection, comes out mechanically, without the passion it should carry. It's a cold kiss, devoid of emotion, and the moment our lips touch, my heart tightens in a mixture of sadness and guilt. The kiss leaves me even more disturbed because I can't help but make the comparison. It's Aria that invades my mind, with her intense presence, her challenging gaze, and that kiss that, even after so many years, still seems to burn in my memory. How can one single night, 5 years ago, have left such a deep mark? How can this woman, whom I know so little, have such a powerful hold over my thoughts? With a night marked by restless and disturbing dreams about Aria, I decide that the only way to calm my restless mind is to go to the station. I need to know exactly what she is being accused of. I need to understand why this woman continues to orbit my thoughts. The previous night had been a whirlwind, and even now, as the sun barely began to rise on the horizon, I felt that I needed answers. The station was in full swing, even at that hour. Police officers and detectives hurried back and forth, their voices blending into a sea of orders and reports, while the constant ringing of phones filled the air with palpable tension. Upon entering, I pay no mind to formalities. Time is a luxury I cannot afford. My steps are firm, purposeful, and I head straight toward the chief's office, ignoring the curious and respectful looks directed my way as I pass. "Your Majesty, it's an honor to have you here." The chief jumps up from his worn leather chair, his eyes widening in surprise before he gathers himself, giving a quick, almost automatic bow. His usual authoritative demeanor softens in deference, as is expected given my position. "Is there anything I can do for you? All of my best men are still investigating those scoundrels of the wolf-spawn renegades." His voice carries a tone of urgency, a desire to prove himself, but I am little interested in discussions about the incompetence of his team in dealing with the rebellious lycans. The truth is, the local police, composed mostly of humans, are ill-equipped to handle creatures so powerful. The wolf-spawn renegades are a threat that transcends these men's abilities, and their investigations, at best, are fruitless. I wave my hand in a dismissive gesture, signaling that I am not here to discuss that. I am here to inquire about a human you arrested last night. Her name is Aria. Unfortunately, I do not have her surname, but I know it was during the night. I want to know what crime she is being accused of. I declare firmly, asserting my authority. The chief, a stocky man with a worn-out appearance, hurries to fulfill my request. He sits heavily in his armchair, the sound of creaking leather echoing in the small office, and begins typing on the computer with trembling fingers, the seriousness of his expression showing that he understands the importance of what I am asking. While he searches, my eyes scan the room, registering the details with an increasing discomfort. The chief's office is a claustrophobic space, permeated by unpleasant smells that make my lycan senses rebel. The stale scent of cigarette smoke embedded in the walls mixes with the musty aroma of old papers, creating a combination that is only worsened by the cheap and rancid perfume emanating from the chief himself. It is a place where time seems to have stopped, where modernity has failed to penetrate, and where decay is disguised by a pathetic attempt to maintain appearances. Here it is, Your Majesty. Aria Everhart, 25 years old. Accused of homicide, the chief announces, his voice taking on a grave tone as he reads the information on the screen. The weight of the accusation hangs in the air, laden with implications that I am still trying to process. Homicide? I repeat, almost in disbelief. The words seem to echo in my mind, bringing up a series of scenarios I hadn't considered before. I was prepared for a range of possibilities, but homicide? That was something I hadn't expected. Who is the victim? I ask, my voice low and tinged with a dark tone, already anticipating an answer that could complicate matters further. The report says it was her boss, Your Majesty, he informs seriously. If Aria was capable of killing her boss, what did that mean for her involvement in this whole situation? Had I underestimated the complexity of this woman? And more importantly, had I missed some crucial clue related to the Wolfspawn renegades? I quickly bid farewell to the chief, the urgency in my voice not going unnoticed by him. I feel time is running out, and every minute lost could mean a new complication. If Aria is being accused of murder, especially against that detestable boss, perhaps I miss some vital clue about the rebellious lycans. Maybe she is more involved with the Wolfspawn renegades than I had imagined. Or maybe there is something more, something I still cannot understand.
If you enjoyed it, share, comment, and like. If you want to read the book, link in the description.